used to believe we were the kind of family that weathered storms without a scratch. You know the type: Sunday dinners, holiday photos with everyone smiling, birthday cards signed with all our love. I believe that was us. Even when times were hard, we held together like tightly woven fabric. Or so I thought. My name is Elaine. I'm 64 years old. I live alone now, in a small house on the edge of town, where the wind always sounds like it's trying to say something through the trees. I used to live here with my husband, Victor, and our 3 children, Grace, Daniel, and little Maddie. We raised them with everything we had. Not much money, but there was love. I would have sworn by it. I did swear by it every time someone looked at me like I was too optimistic. Victor worked construction most of his life, calloused hands, long hours, hard lines in his face. He didn't talk much, but when he did, you listened. I used to think silence was his way of showing strength. I filled the quiet with songs, stories, and laughter for the kids. Grace was the firstborn, always serious. Daniel had his father's eyes, full of storms. And Maddie, well, she was the sunshine, my sunshine. Looking back now, there were signs: a missed dinner, a slammed door, Victor drinking more than usual after long shifts, Grace staying out later and later, Daniel locking himself in his room with music so loud you could feel it in your bones, Maddie asking questions with her big, frightened eyes that I never had good answers for, but I ignored it. I told myself all families go through rough patches, that it would pass. I believed love was enough to hold us. I truly believed that, until the night everything cracked. It was a Wednesday. Rain on the windows, dinner half cooked. I was chopping onions when I heard shouting. Daniel and Victor again. Their fights had become routine by then, but this one was different, louder, more violent. Then something crashed, glass or wood, I don't know. I ran in. Maddie was screaming. Grace was trying to pull them apart. And Victor, I'd never seen that look in his eyes before, like he wasn't even there. I stood in that doorway, knife still in my hand, and realized I didn't know my family anymore. I had no idea who we were, or maybe I had never really known at all. And that was the beginning of the truth unraveling, one strand at a time. After that night, things didn't break all at once. They splintered quietly, like old wood under pressure. The kind of breaking that takes time, and by the time you notice it's happening, it's too late to stop it. Victor didn't apologize, not for the fight, not for scaring the children, not for what he said to Daniel. And Daniel, he changed, practically overnight. He stopped coming home after school. His eyes stopped meeting mine. There was a hardness in him I hadn't seen before, like something had settled in his chest and made itself permanent. I tried to hold the pieces together. I cooked their favorite meals. I left notes on their pillows. I told stories at dinner, even when no one was listening. Grace pretended everything was fine. She always had that habit, smiling through it even when she was drowning. She helped me clean, helped me fold the laundry, helped me tuck Maddie in when Victor started coming home, Later and later, smelling like beer and sweat and silence. And Maddie, she stopped singing. That was the moment that broke something inside me. She used to hum all the time, little made-up songs while brushing her hair, or feeding the cat, or tying her shoes. It was like a thread of joy that ran through our house. But then, one day I realized I hadn't heard her sing in weeks. And when I asked her why, she just shrugged and said, "Nobody listens anyway." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab Victor and shake him. I wanted to pull Daniel out of whatever dark place he was falling into. But instead, I smiled. I told Maddie I was listening. I always was. But she didn't believe me. And the truth is, I think I didn't believe myself either. Then came the phone call. It was almost midnight. Victor wasn't home. I thought it was him, but it was the police. Daniel had been picked up for shoplifting. Nothing big, a pair of headphones, a bottle of soda, but it wasn't about the items. It was about why, about what it meant. I drove to the station in my slippers, heart pounding so hard it hurt. When I saw him in that holding cell, my boy, my storm-eyed boy, I didn't see rebellion. I saw pain. I saw someone lost. And I realized I didn't even know how long he'd been gone, not just from the house, but from us. When I brought him home, Victor didn't say a word, just looked at him, then walked past both of us. And Grace? She was already packing. She looked at me with eyes far older than 17 and said, "I can't live here anymore, Mom. I can't watch us rot." Rot. That word stuck to my ribs like something poisonous, and still, I begged her to stay. I cried. I promised things would change. But she left the next morning without saying goodbye to anyone but Maddie. That was the moment the house started to feel empty, even though it was still full of silence, full of anger, full of ghosts. Grace leaving was like someone had cut the anchor line on a ship already drifting too far from shore. After she walked out the front door with that one duffel bag slung over her shoulder, the air in the house changed. Not just heavier, quieter, a dead sort of quiet. Daniel barely looked up. Victor said nothing, and Maddie, she just sat on the stairs with her arms wrapped around her knees like she was trying to hold herself together. I watched her that night, sitting in the dark, rocking gently like she'd done as a baby when her dreams scared her. But now she wasn't dreaming. This was real. And I remember thinking, how did it come to this? I used to be the mother who packed lunch boxes with love notes and handmade cookies. I used to braid Grace's hair every morning, kiss Daniel's forehead even when he said he was too old for that, and make up silly bedtime stories for Maddie until she giggled herself to sleep. I built this family with my bare hands, and now I was watching it crumble, and I didn't know where to start picking up the pieces. I tried to call Grace every day for weeks. No answer. Left voicemails I never dared listen to again. "I miss you. Please, come home. Just tell me you're okay." The silence on the other end was louder than any fight we'd ever had. Victor? He retreated further into himself. He worked less, drank more. There were nights he wouldn't even come home, and when he did, I smelled perfume that wasn't mine. Once I asked him, just once. He didn't lie. He didn't have to. He just said, "What did you expect, Elaine? This house is poison." I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have words. I had so many words. They just got stuck behind the lump in my throat. Because in that moment, I understood something I'd been refusing to see. Victor had left us long before Grace did. He was just waiting for the rest of us to fall apart enough to justify it. After that, I stopped asking questions. I moved through the house like a ghost. Cooked meals nobody ate. Washed clothes nobody thanked me for. Tried to pretend Maddie wasn't crying herself to sleep just one room away. And Daniel, he started disappearing. Not for a few hours, but for days. I didn't know where he went. I called hospitals. I called friends. I even called the police once, just to see if he'd been brought in again. Nothing. He'd come back with bruises and blood on his shirt. Say it was nothing. Slam his door. Sleep for 16 hours. And the cycle would repeat. I tried to talk to him. God, did I try. But he looked through me, like I was made of glass. One night after he stumbled in smelling like liquor and smoke, I stood in front of his door and begged to tell me what was happening. He just laughed. Cold. Hollow. "You really didn't see it, did you?" he said. "You were too busy pretending we were perfect." And then he shut the door in my face. That night I sat at the kitchen table until dawn, staring at the chipped ceramic mug I'd had since our wedding. It used to say, "Home is where the heart is." But now the words were faded, scratched, barely readable. I realized I hadn't felt like this was home in a long, long time. And worse, I wasn't sure if I ever really had. It's strange how grief can seep into the wallpaper, into the cushions, into the very floorboards beneath your feet. After a while, I couldn't walk from the kitchen to the hallway without feeling the weight of everything we'd lost pressing down on my shoulders. Not just lost, squandered, ignored. I was holding on by threads, waking up every morning and wondering which version of my son would walk through the door, if he came home at all. Whether Maddie would speak more than 2 words that day, whether Victor would bother pretending he still belonged to this family. I used to think heartbreak was loud, like glass shattering, but now I knew better. Sometimes it's quiet, like a faucet dripping, like a door that doesn't close all the way, like a child who stops asking for bedtime stories. And then something happened that changed everything. It was a Saturday morning just after sunrise. I was folding laundry on the couch, trying to keep myself busy while the house was still asleep. Maddie came downstairs in her pajamas, holding something in her hand. "Mom?" she said. Her voice small, uncertain. I looked up. "What is it, baby?" She hesitated, then opened her palm. There was a razor blade. Just one. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just froze. "I found it in Daniel's room," she whispered. "Under his bed." The blood drained from my face. I took it from her carefully, like it might explode. I told her everything was fine. that she was so brave to tell me and sent her back upstairs. I waited until I heard her door close, and then I sat there, staring at that tiny blade on the coffee table, my hands shaking so hard I couldn't even pray properly. Something inside me cracked open. The part of me that had been telling myself this was just a phase, just a rough patch, just a bad year. It died in that moment, because now it wasn't just about sadness or silence or losing the closeness we used to have. This was danger, this was crisis, and I had let it grow inside my home. I confronted Daniel that evening. I waited until Maddie had gone to bed. Victor was gone, where I didn't care anymore. I knocked on Daniel's door. He didn't answer. I opened it anyway. He was sitting on the floor, back against the wall, arms around his knees. When he saw the razor blade in my hand, he didn't even flinch. "Is it yours?" I asked. He shrugged. I knelt beside him. "Daniel, are you hurting yourself?" Silence. I placed the blade down between us. "Please, I need to understand." Still nothing. Then, just as I was about to speak again, he said it. One sentence. Quiet. Shaky. "He hits Maddie when you're not around." My whole body turned to ice. I blinked. "What?" Daniel looked at me. Really looked at me. Eyes red, voice hollow. "Dad, he doesn't do it often. Just when she talks back, when she cries. He says she needs to toughen up, says it's nothing. But it is, Mom. It is something." And you didn't see it. I felt the room spin. I tried to breathe, but it was like the air had been sucked out of the house entirely. My mouth moved, but no words came. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that it couldn't be true, that I would have known, but the look on his face said everything. And suddenly, all the little things, the flinches, the silence, the forced smiles, came crashing into focus like shards of glass under a spotlight. My family wasn't falling apart. It had already fallen. And I had been standing in the ruins, pretending they were just shadows. The days that followed were both the hardest and the clearest I had ever lived. There was no more pretending, no more excuses. I moved through our broken house with purpose, cleaning out every dark corner I had let grow for years, both the literal and the emotional ones. I threw out Victor's clothes, boxed up the tools he'd left behind, wiped fingerprints off the bathroom mirror until I could finally see myself clearly again. Not the scared, tired version of me I had become, but the mother I once was, the one who used to sing lullabies over sick beds and sew patches on jeans without complaint. Maddie clung to me for a while, like a shadow. She didn't want to be in a room alone, didn't want to sleep unless her door was cracked open, and I promised to check on her every hour. I did, every night. And sometimes I caught her eyes still open, staring at the ceiling, as if waiting for something awful to return. I'd just brush her hair back and say, "You're safe, baby. I'm here now. I see you." Daniel was harder. He was angry. Not at me, not really, but at everything, and I don't blame him. He'd carried a secret no boy should ever have to carry, protected his sister in silence because he thought I wouldn't believe him, because I hadn't noticed. That kind of weight turns even gentle hearts into something sharp. But slowly, he started talking. One word at a time, then full sentences, then whole nights sitting at the kitchen table with mugs of tea and stories I wasn't ready to hear, but needed to. He told me how he used to sit outside Maddie's room when Victor came home drunk, how he'd wait just in case. He told me about the night Victor shoved her into the wall for spilling milk on the floor, and how she didn't tell me because she thought she had done something wrong. That broke me. And then he said something I'll never forget. You taught me how to be kind, Mom. That's why I didn't hit him back. It was the kindest cruelty I had ever heard. I found a counselor who specialized in trauma for Daniel, for Maddie, and eventually for me. I sold Victor's old pickup to pay for sessions, took on a cleaning job at a local school during the day, and crocheted blankets to sell online at night. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. It was honest. And then, 2 weeks later, Grace called. I missed the call. She didn't leave a voicemail, just hung up after 2 rings. I stared at my phone like it was a live wire, afraid to breathe. And then it rang again. This time I answered. Hi, Mom, she said. I hadn't realized how much I missed her voice until I heard it again. My throat closed up. I whispered, Hi, baby. There was a pause, long enough that I thought maybe she'd hang up again, but she didn't. I heard about Dad, she said. Daniel told me. Another pause. You believe him now? Yes, I said. I should have believed all of you sooner. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. Do you want me to come home? She asked. And that's when I broke. I didn't cry out of sadness this time. I cried out of relief, because it meant she hadn't given up on us completely, that there was still something left to rebuild. I want you to come home, Grace, I said. But only if you want to. Only if you feel safe. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, okay, just like that. And that weekend, she arrived. Older, thinner, but still my girl. Maddie screamed and ran to her. Daniel stood awkwardly in the hallway until Grace wrapped her arms around him and said, You did good, little brother. That night, we sat together for dinner, the first real dinner in a long, long time. It wasn't fancy, just spaghetti and garlic bread, but it felt sacred. No shouting, no fear, no empty chairs filled with silence, just the 3 of them, and me. And for the first time in years, I thought, we're going to be okay. Okay didn't mean perfect. It didn't mean the pain vanished overnight, or that forgiveness bloomed like spring flowers. Healing isn't soft. It's jagged. It's slow. It hurts. But we showed up. Every single day. Grace moved back in, just for a while, she said. But her toothbrush stayed. Then a drawer of clothes. Then one morning, I found her slippers next to mine at the foot of my bed, and I knew she wasn't going anywhere. Not yet. Not until she was sure her siblings were safe. Not until we were a family again, in whatever form we could manage. Daniel started therapy, reluctantly at first. He said it was pointless, that nothing could fix the past. But week by week, he softened. He started helping around the house again. He took Maddie to the library, helped her with math. I once found them curled up on the couch watching cartoons, the same cartoons they used to watch when Maddie was 5. She was laughing. Real laughter. Not that tight, guarded smile she used to wear like armor. One day he asked me, "Do you think I turned into him?" I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "No, because you chose to protect, not to hurt. That's what makes you different." He cried and let me hold him. Grace started cooking again. She made dishes I hadn't tasted in years, spicy, strange, wonderful things she'd learned while living on her own. And we sat at that table together and talked about everything, about the past, the future, about what we could still save, and Maddie, oh, my Maddie. She sang again. The first time, it was while brushing her teeth, just a little hum. But it was there, and I stood outside the bathroom, hand over my mouth, tears slipping down my cheeks. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. That small voice, so full of life again, reminded me we hadn't lost everything. But healing also meant reckoning. One morning, a letter arrived, a legal one. Victor had responded to the report. He wanted to fight for visitation rights. I sat with it in my lap, my hands shaking. The idea of him near Maddie made my stomach turn, but I didn't hide the letter. I gathered the kids, all 3 of them, and showed it to them. "We'll face this together," I said. "No more secrets, no more hiding." Daniel wanted to fight. Grace wanted to burn it. Maddie looked terrified, but then she said, "Can we tell the judge what happened?" "Yes, baby," I said. "You'll be heard, all of you." It took months. Statements, court dates, more painful conversations than I can count. But when it ended, the judge ruled in our favor. No contact, no visitation, no more shadows at our doorstep. We came home that day exhausted, but lighter. Daniel put his arm around Maddie. Grace opened a bottle of sparkling juice, and we toasted, not to victory, but to survival, to the fact that we were still here, still us, bent, bruised, but unbroken. That night, I sat alone in the backyard under the stars. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I thought about the woman I had been, the one who thought love alone could fix anything, the one who thought silence meant strength, that keeping up appearances was more important than asking hard questions. I mourned her, and I forgave her, because she did the best she could. And when it wasn't enough, when the walls caved in, she rose up. She fought, not for a marriage, but for her children. And in the end, that made all the difference. It's been almost 3 years since that final court ruling. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, the phantom sound of a slammed door ringing in my ears. Trauma doesn't just vanish. It lingers in the floorboards, in the silence between conversations, in the way I double-check the locks each night, even though I know we're safe now. But then I hear Maddie's soft breathing from the next room, or I catch the sound of Daniel laughing, not shouting, and I remember we made it through. We are not the same people we were. None of us. Grace stayed. She finished nursing school, got a job at the local hospital, and she still comes home every evening to eat dinner with us, no matter how tired she is. She doesn't talk much about those years she was gone, but she holds Maddie like someone she nearly lost, and she watches over Daniel like a second mother. Daniel got sober. He fell in love with photography, of all things, and started taking pictures of the small, quiet moments most people overlook. The way Maddie smiles when she reads. The way light spills through the window in the early morning. The way I stir tea and hum under my breath. He says it helps him see beauty again. And Maddie, she's 13 now, fierce, brilliant, unapologetically herself. She's writing music, journaling, wearing colors she used to be afraid to touch. She doesn't flinch when someone raises their voice anymore. She looks them right in the eye. One evening, she brought me a small wooden box she had made in art class. On the lid, in bright painted letters, it said, "Strong doesn't mean silent." I held it in my hands like it was sacred. Inside was a note. "Thank you for finding your voice, Mom, because you gave me mine." I cried, of course, but it wasn't from sadness. It was from awe, from pride, from a deep, aching love I never stopped carrying, even when I was lost inside my own silence. You know, people talk about strength like it's something loud, something aggressive. But I've learned that real strength, it's quiet, it's persistent, it's getting up every single day and choosing to love, to protect, to fight, even after you failed. For a long time I thought my family was strong, that we couldn't break. But we did break. Hard, ugly, and in that wreckage, I saw the truth. Not all stories are fairy tales. Sometimes they're survival songs, raw, honest, cracked and off-key, but real. And now, when people ask how I did it, how I held on, I tell them the truth. I didn't. We held on to each other, and that made all the difference.